Are you looking for something to do on your lunch break? Well, there's a show on the BS3 network that has only 4 words to say to you.
We ready. We ready. We ready for y'all. We ready. We ready. We ready.
The Lunch Break with AJ, powered by JM&E. Live weekdays at noon Central.
And welcome. It's not AJ, it's Chris Gardner, me and Andy Yanez. I'm KG, Chris Gardner, owner of the Houston Roundball Review, and welcome to the Houston Roundball Review takeover of the lunch break here on Throwback Thursday, powered by JM&E, streaming to you live on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and of course on Roku on the BS3 network. Andy Yanez from Paul Slamma Jamma. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Chris. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Let's get into it. I'm going to toss some curveballs here because some baseball scores. Houston Cougars survived, lived another day. They held on to defeat Wichita State earlier today in a double elimination game, loser-leave town match using wrestling vernacular. Cougs held on to win 4-3. So Wichita State is done in the AAC tournament. The Cougs will play tomorrow. Let's see here. They will face the loser of number 7 seed Tulane versus 6 seed Memphis. That game will start roughly 50 minutes after a noon matchup between 1 seed East Carolina and the loser of South Florida and UCF. Mr. Yanez, as far as in your opinion, has UH baseball done enough to save Coach Whitting's job?
Oh, Chris, I have no idea. I don't know what the expectations of the program are. That the story of the baseball team is, they got off to a slow start. I think there were a handful of games under 500, and then they turned it around when conference play began. And I believe that they did not lose a single series against American Athletic Conference opponents, which included taking 2 out of 3 against East Carolina during the season. But a lot of it, there was always they're doing good in conference play, but there was always a but, and that but was the American Athletic Conference and the quality of the teams in the conference. And of course, when you look at the baseball program as a whole, what the goal really is for the program at this point is to try to make it to the NCAA tournament, and it will be really hard. In my opinion, I don't think they'll make it if they don't win the American Athletic Conference tournament, and it's a double elimination tournament. First day of the AAC tournament was a little bit crazy when both the top 2 seeds in East Carolina and Houston lost in their first matchup, but both are able to hang on. And at this point, it's win or go home for Houston, in my opinion, especially literal. Well, if they do lose, that's it for them in the American Athletic Conference. But I don't see them being able to make the NCAA tournament without winning the conference tournament outright.
And in addition, it wasn't just 1 seed ECU and 2 seed Houston. 3 seed Wichita State also lost on day 1 of the AAC tournament. So the Cougs Shockers matchup today was a 2-3 matchup. And the Shockers are now done. So, yes. So, yeah, go figure. Tournament play it's wacky, and not just in basketball. So we'll see. The Cougs baseball team plays Saturday. If they lose, then their season's over. I think the last I saw in terms of net rankings or RPI rankings for baseball, I don't think baseball uses a net, but RPI rankings, Cougs are like between 80 and 90. And that's not good enough to be an at-large team to reach to qualify for the baseball tournament. So, like you said, if they don't win the AAC championship outright, I think their season's done. Just like Texas Southern season is done because they lost earlier today in double elimination game. They lost to Prairie View 9-6, and both those teams were coming off losses. PV lives to play another day. They'll play Friday morning against the loser of Alabama State and Florida A&M. So it's not a lot of great baseball in the city of Houston, Andy, but we're going to talk basketball. First, for folks who are wondering, where is Willie Gibson? Willie had to take care of the job that pays the bills, doing more training. It's funny. He and Kenitra are training new employees at their jobs. Good afternoon to the BS3 family chiming in on YouTube. Thank you very much. And once again, you are watching us on YouTube, Roku on the BS3 network, which you don't have that. Why don't you have BS3? Just download it. Go to Roku and get the BS3 network app, or just go to bs3network.com. Mr. Yanez. Hey, Erica, how are you? I think we talked about it on Sunday's edition of Folks Talking Sports. Game 3 had not yet taken place between Boston and Miami, and you believe that the Celtics would win Game 3.
I was completely wrong with my predictions. I said if Boston lost Game 3, they would get swept, and then I said the Lakers were going to win Game 4 and not get swept, and the opposite happened. The Celtics not only lost Game 3, they won Game 4 to avoid elimination, and the Lakers got swept. So, not
Game
a good
5,
weekend.
Yeah, good. We don't bet. It's a good thing we don't bet. But Game 5, Boston, Miami tonight in Boston. Will it be a Game 6?
The story of the Boston Celtics, you don't know. It's like the old Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of the old story with the Boston Celtics. You don't know what version, what iteration of them you're going to get. And really, it starts with their two stars, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Especially Jason Tatum. It's so odd. I saw a stat earlier today where if they make it reminded me of the 2018 Rockets in the sense where it said if they make 13 or more 3-point baskets, they're like 25-4 over the course of the season. They're a really good team when they make 13 or more threes. When they don't, they're a really mediocre team. They're hovering around 500, and I think for all the conversation there's been and an argument about Joe Mazzulla and the job he's done as the fill-in head coach after Ime Udoka left and that whole situation happened in Boston. At the end of the day, it's the players that have to go out there and make plays. And Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, they can't disappear in the fourth quarter and not even disappear, just not even shoot the ball, like not have consistent number of field goals. Like there have been multiple games where one of them at least, gets off like 3 total shots in the second half in multiple games. And as far as the Celtics go, it'll be because of them. And if we get a Jason Tatum like we saw in games in that fourth quarter against Philadelphia, Game 6, Game 7 against the 76ers, then Boston's going to win. If we see Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown that we saw in Game 1 and Game 2 of the series, then they're going to lose. Simple as that.
It is as simple as that. And Erica, I posted your Let's Go Heat comment. Chime in the YouTube comments while you're saying that. Eric Spoelstra, hell of a coach. I think more and more folks are realizing or acknowledging how great a coach he is. Some now say he's the best head coach in the NBA. We'll see. But also, if Miami goes on, Boston did a better job against the zone in Game 4. As a pro team should. I mean, it should not be a mystery for a pro team how to handle a zone defense. But we'll see. I'm kind of curious to see if Miami changes their kind of zone defense they play Thursday night, or they just stick to the similar thing they did in Game 4 and hope Boston misses threes. I'm not a big fan of a defense where you hope your opponent misses, but rather than contest the shots and help make them miss. I know it's NBA and big-time players make big-time shots. Shifting gears, Nuggets, Lakers. Eric says he's just not a Celtics fan. Fair enough. Okay. Nuggets going to the NBA Finals for the first time in franchise history. Your thoughts on the sweep, and of course, your thoughts on LeBron James contemplating retirement. Do you believe he will retire?
Well, first, the thoughts on the sweep. I mean, my goodness, Nikola Jokic, he made some crazy, crazy one-legged shots, and that was really the story of the series. It was a 4-0 sweep in favor of the Nuggets, but for the most part, all four games, there were just a few plays away from different outcomes. And at the end of the day, Jamal Murray and Jokic were able to execute down the stretch, and the Lakers couldn't. And it goes down. I mean, just look at the last possession in game four where LeBron drove down the lane. Jamal Murray read it. He met him. He beat him to the spot and really made it almost impossible for LeBron to even be able to get up a shot and really lobbed up the block that Aaron Gordon had to not even get a chance at extending the series in game four. And I mean, that was really the story of the entire series between Denver and Los Angeles. And I think it's really hard to not make an argument as of now. And of course, it's a very, very reactionary type of league. But is there anyone better than Nikola Jokic right now playing in the league? That's
No,
something that
not right now. I mean, LeBron had a heck of a game, had a heck of a hell. This is streaming. Hell of a first half. And he said it after the game. He is still one of the top players in the league, but slowly but surely, Father Time is catching up with him. And you could see he was wearing down in the second half, and especially in the fourth quarter down the stretch. But the Joker is the real deal, man. He is the best player. His defense is not great. So if you want to, mark him for that. So he's not a great two-way player. He's not elite on both sides of the floor. But offensively, scoring, passing, he can rebound. He's right up there. And your thoughts. So let's take a break because I'm gonna get your thoughts when we come back. I'm gonna play a clip with my man Cole Johnson. Cole, I gotta take you up on it. I want to talk with Andy about it. See if he has some ideas. Want to use his image in our spot for the Houston Roundball Review takeover of lunch break. But here it is from Cole Sports. Cole Johnson of Cole Sports. We'll be back in about 70 seconds. You're watching the Houston Roundball Review takeover of the lunch break here on the BS3 Network.
If you're looking for a sports program that gives you the flavor,
Washington Commanders? Really?
This whole thing stinks to high heaven.
that pulls no punches,
Thuggish act by a thuggish actor.
that gives you some humor,
Praise everything LeBron does and never criticize it.
if you want a show that gives you good times, then this is that show. BS3 Network proudly presents
I am Cole Johnson and welcome to
Cole Sports with a Z. Every Friday on Patreon and every Saturday on YouTube, Spreaker, and all other outlets.
And we're back to another edition of the Houston Roundball Review takeover of the lunch break. I am KG Chris Gardner, owner of the Houston Roundball Review, and joining me is Andy Yanez of Pod Slamma Jamma. Well, Andy, right here from Tony M, a loyal supporter and follower of our shows on YouTube. Do you agree LeBron is not retiring on a sweep? 100% guarantee.
I absolutely agree. It's going to be really hard to see that be the lasting image of LeBron James of a really historic career come down to a drive and a block. I just don't see it. At the very least, I think he's in play for one more season, and honestly, I could see him play two more seasons. Kind of you get the spectrum, you get both ends of the spectrum after the post game after Los Angeles's loss in Game 4, where LeBron said he still feels he's better than 95% of the league when healthy, and if that's the case, I don't necessarily see how he could be ready to retire when the Lakers were right there. They made it to the Western Conference Finals. Like I said, even though they got swept, it wasn't like there was a rift between Los Angeles and the Nuggets. I think they're still relatively close if they're able to build upon really the momentum that they had after the trade deadline and go for the quest for a fifth championship in LeBron James's career. And then, of course, the underlying storyline is his desire to want to play with Bronny James at some point in the NBA. Whenever, if he is one and done, and he does end up playing 2 seasons from now, that's kind of the overarching story that just makes it hard for me to see him walk away after this season.
How about this comment about a farewell tour for the King? And before you say that, I'm might be naive. Bronny's got 1 year for sure at USC. I'm not as convinced as I used to be that LeBron will hang around for 2 years to play with his son. Not sure why. I think the wear and tear on LeBron this season, the foot issues, I think that's going to be part of it to say, you know, I'm your dad. That's not going to change. I just can't do it anymore. That kind of thing. What are your thoughts?
See, that's why I think he needs to play one more year to see if this season was much more of an aberration or, I mean, it is a grind. Having to go through an entire 82 game schedule, which he doesn't play all 82 games, and this season in particular was because of that ankle injury. Where, I mean, depending on whatever reports you want to listen or read about, it was a very severe injury that he suffered, and it held him out for an extended period of time, and arguably, if the Lakers don't turn around the season after the trade deadline, maybe he doesn't come back this season. And it's a completely different story. But I get that argument. I think he has to come back for at least one more season. And then if it becomes a trend where he's consistently dealing with nagging injuries, or if it's consistently whether it be an ankle or leg injuries and stuff like that, and then I could see that come this point next year, that being a valid reason for retirement. But again, right now, it's too hard to see after one season.
Do you agree with these skills? He's going to retire like all NBA greats do, broke down and injured. It's tradition.
Well, even if it's broke, I know he said all NBA greats, but I think LeBron has a real opportunity to walk away like Peyton Manning did, going out on top depending on what the Lakers do in the offseason. Again, I don't think they're a few pieces away from a solid roster to being able to be right there in the NBA Finals.
Is one of those pieces Kyrie Irving?
It depends on what they have to give up for Kyrie Irving, and
okay,
if they have to really the two key pieces are Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura.
All right. Well, that's what I was going to ask you. If they re-sign Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura, does that say that shut the door on Kyrie? Because I'm guessing the only way they could do that really, realistically, would be getting rid of D'Lo.
I think they're going to get rid of D'Angelo Russell regardless, and really have a more consistent, true point guard that can orchestrate the offense. I mean, we saw it during stretches. I mean, Dennis Schroeder did a decent job being able to fill in that role, especially against Golden State and against Memphis. But I mean, there were times where Schroeder, it seemed like
he was limited.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So regardless whether it's Kyrie Irving or not, they definitely need an upgrade at the point guard position, because again, going back to LeBron, he's not at a point in his career where he can be the point guard for the Lakers consistently and being able to get to championship without wearing down. Then you really are going to see him wear down, like you saw in that Nugget series. I mean, every game in Denver, the game 1 and game 2, every time they panned to him after the conclusion of a game, he was exhausted.
Yep.
He
had to do everything, as a ball handler. He can't do that anymore for long periods of games without being worn down and worn out in the fourth quarter down the stretch. He needs someone to facilitate, run the offense, create shots, get their own buckets, and get their teammates involved. And Kyrie could do that. I think this yes is to from Willie Gibson is to Kyrie as a Laker. Justin, because both Kyrie and Trae Young were there in LA at the game. Trae Young as a Laker, I don't see the Hawks doing that in a sense of, would they want D'Angelo Russell if you're trading Trae Young? No, I wouldn't. But what do you think about Trae Young? What would the Hawks want? No. Who would the Hawks want if they were to deal Trae Young to the Lakers?
I would want Austin Reeves. I don't know. It's the pieces I don't think fit for a Trae Young trade, and honestly, I don't think the Lakers. That's not what they need. An undersized guard that is a defensive liability. Like they need a player, whether it be Kyrie Irving or not, that can consistently playmaking and create shots for others, as well as being able to get his own basket. And for me, Trae Young in that role, Los Angeles would be too streaky, and the price is probably way too high.
We're going to talk Rockets in a moment. I'm going to pass this note along. I don't believe it was a secret. In case it were a secret, I'll just say sources told me, a reliable source told me, that Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark was in Kansas City Tuesday and Wednesday. He met the mayor at City Hall to talk about keeping Kansas City as a focal point of Big 12 events, such as Media Day, basketball tip-off, the men's and women's basketball championships. Your thoughts on Commissioner Yormark visiting the mayor and being in Kansas City?
You just being able to solidify and establish stability. That's the word that comes to mind. Stability, being able to have an anchor spot for the conferences, specifically when it pertains to basketball. And it's kind of a relatively good central point for the conference.
Agreed. I like Kansas City. We were there. I've been there for the last couple of years for Media Day. Of course, the Cougs, Sweet 16 was there. And lost to Miami was there for that also. Part of me hopes at some point Houston's next mayor, whoever the heck that is, gets involved with some of these Big 12 events. Media days for basketball, football, whatever. But now that, well, it's not now, but about 37 days away, Andy, from Houston joining the Big 12, it's time the city of Houston gets involved with some hosting of Big 12 events. Right, D Skills, H-Town, right, Tony M. Justin, I'm not sure if you're a UH alum, but UH follower or supporter, but there's more events coming to H-Town. What do you think about that, Andy?
It would be great to the city just to be able to have that, not necessarily tourism, but just to have that allure, because you're going to have, if it's a Big 12 conference event, you're going to have people from all over the conference coming into the city, which obviously, of course, translates to a boom, regardless of how big that event specifically is. From an economic perspective for the city, obviously, it's a good way to promote the city and just be able to grow and continue to build kind of the image for the city of Houston and for the Cougars specifically, kind of benefit from that and being able to get more publicity. Might not be the right word, but just being able to get more attention around the city and in a way for the University of Houston to be able to benefit from that.
And it'd be a good way. I got a great spot for media days if they want to play some golf and talk to media afterwards or before. Got a great spot in mind for that. Hit me up, Commissioner Yormark, or other folks in the office. Seriously, I do have a spot in mind for that. And see, I like
exactly
this.
what the spot is.
You've been there. Justin is a Coug. Justin, I knew you were a good guy. Good. D Skills here. This is correct. Houston would be the biggest city in the Big 12, and we should be hosting Big 12 events. Agreed. But then out there, putting in the universe, I know some politicians in town. I know some of y'all watch the shows and things like that. Let's make it happen. Justin says there's no reason why Houston shouldn't be at the forefront of this. So, agreed. You guys do your part. Spread it around on Twitter, social media, politicians, talk shows. Let's start to put a bug in folks' ear, because I was going right here. Houston can host World Cup, but not Big 12 events. It'll be the host site of the CFP Championship next year in January.
Close to the Final Four.
They've hosted Final Four, so they should be able to do this. So, and of course, it'd be cool for the city, but let's make it happen. Big 12 should be coming to H-Town at some point in my lifetime. Okay, in my lifetime. Reminding everybody, you're watching the Houston Roundball Review takeover of the lunch break on Throwback Thursday on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and of course on Roku on the BS3 network. Download that app on Roku. Get the BS3 TV. If you don't have BS3, go to bs3network.com. Okay. My man Kelly Eco from The Athletic got some trade proposals we're going to discuss in a moment. Going to pick your brain on those. But I think 2 days ago in The Athletic, he wrote about this. Our good Andy, your good friend, James Harden, former franchise player and current Sixers guard. James Harden is the top target, Andy, the top target for Houston in free agency. Just right there. What are your thoughts on that?
Tillman Fertitta couldn't get over his first crush, his first love, his first basketball really superstar when he bought the team. But what I'm focused outside of Harden, other high-ranking targets include Brook Lopez, Dylan Brooks. What? Whoa. Brook.
Go ahead.
Brook Lopez would be a great target if it was 10 or 5 years ago. And maybe it was just the way Milwaukee utilized him. But, I mean, he really turned into a catch-and-shoot big, which, I mean, Houston does need more veteran presence in the paint. But is Brook Lopez the right anchor to be able to be a defensive
He's
force
a better shot blocker than Şengün.
Well, yeah, but how old is Brook Lopez?
He's in his 30s. Yeah, and he'd be making probably $20 million a year in his new contract, his next contract.
Dylan Brooks. We know Dylan Brooks' baggages if he were to come here. Under Udoka, I don't think he'd be as vocal as he was in Memphis. I mean, depending on the price, he is more. See, this is where are the Rockets organizationally? Because Dylan Brooks is a nice fit for a team that's going to be competing in the postseason, regardless of.
Lopez is 35.
You see, I don't see the I don't see the fit with either. Dylan Brooks, I see it more than Brook Lopez, but it's still questionable, especially with his struggles from being able to shoot and from the perimeter. So it would be curious to see what kind of lineups he's in. Cam Johnson, obviously, that's the big name that a lot of Rocket fans are in support of. So that's a name that a lot of people would be for. And the same goes for Austin Reeves. How available he actually would be. It seems like the Lakers, again, this is a constant. It's fluid. It's fluid because if the Lakers do choose to go for Kyrie Irving, which Rob Pelinka said there's going to be an emphasis on keeping this core together.
Right.
And like Kyle Kuzma said, if he's heard that before, but we shall see what the Lakers choose to do. I like those two names, especially Cam Johnson. When you look at Houston, and this for the last few years, not just, I mean, really for the past decade, it always seems like small forward hasn't necessarily been strength for this team. I know they had Trevor Ariza, who's a more than capable starter when they were competing for the top spots in the Western Conference. I think Cam Johnson would be a nice fit, and then there would have to be movement in regards to what they do with KJ Martin, what they do potentially with Tari Eason. So there'd be some shakeup there, in my opinion. And then to finish off this excerpt about a veteran point guard, Mike Conley, I don't think he would want to come here, even if
too much money.
Hard.
And the
Jordan
next two guys, Jordan Clark's not a point guard.
And Dante DiVincenzo
is not a point guard either. They're guards. They're lead guards. they're not, I'm in my old school mind, they're not point guards, and they're definitely not
Like
true
Chris
point
Paul.
guards.
Chris Paul.
Yes, Chris
I
Paul.
don't think you're ever gonna get Paul to step foot in the Rockets organization again, but who knows?
Well, I mean, if he's traded, what's he going to do? Hold out?
But
The,
who
S-
would they trade him for?
the
And for
Suns have
50
until
million, 40 million? What's his cap?
June 28th. The contract becomes guaranteed, fully guaranteed, I think, on the 28th of June for $31 million. If they don't guarantee it, the full amount is like 15 and a half. It's like half that, something like that. So there is that possibility. He's a point guard. As a point guard, who would you rather have? Tony M? Would you rather have Chris Paul, or would you rather have James Harden? That goes for everybody. D Skills, Tony M, Justin, who would you rather have? Chris Paul or James Harden? Chris Paul would not cost you 4 years, Andy, $200 million, as reported that the Windhorse put out there. Is that better? That make you feel more at ease about possibly bringing Chris Paul back to the Rockets, being the veteran point guard that they need, the veteran leadership and elite point guard needed to establish structure and offensive cohesion?
Yeah, I agree with these skills. None of the above. Like outside of Austin Reeves and Cam Johnson, these names don't make sense for where the Rockets are. I mean, unless if James Harden indeed is the top target, and you're just going to completely turn over the roster. Those names don't make sense to me.
All right, fair enough.
Now,
And
to answer your question, Harden or Chris Paul, I would say Chris Paul, and I'll caveat this by saying, look at what he did with Oklahoma City when he got traded there for one season, and his presence. I think it's a big reason why the Thunder have been able to overachieve the last few seasons and why they were battling for playing spot this past season, specifically with the jump that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did over the last few seasons after Paul spent a cup of tea with the Thunder.
all right, we're going to be back in about 90 seconds, play another spot. Reminder, you're watching the Houston Roundball Review takeover of the lunch break here on the BS3 Network. Be back in 90 seconds.
BS3 Network, changing the way you watch TV.
And we're back. Thank you for sticking with us. I'm Chris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review. You're watching the Houston Roundball Review takeover of the lunch break. Joining me is Andy Yanez from Pod Slamma Jamma. We're discussing Rockets, James Harden, Cole Johnson of Cole Sports. The emojis are great about James Harden back to Houston. Yucks. There you go. Tony M, I think you and Cole agree on that. Truly. But I'm shifting gears real quick because I forgot about it, but we're going to close it out. Final parts of the show discussing trade ideas and proposals from the Athletics' Kelly Eco. But real quick, the Oklahomans, Barry Trammell. Was it Tuesday? Monday or Tuesday of this week, wrote, said that was it a coach or someone in the Big 12 said the chances of the Colorado returning to the Big 12 are good and would happen soon. Yesterday, I spoke to someone else with ties to Colorado. I like saying this. Sources told me, but a reliable source told me he's heard it's going to happen. Your thoughts on Colorado returning to the Big 12?
Well, if that's the case, I'm curious to see how quickly that move will be. Is it for the 2025 season? Is it for the 2024 season? And for all the expansion talk, the realignment talk, the whatever you want to call it, the new type of college football landscape that's ever changing, there's been this idea of there's multiple schools in the Pac-12 that they're not satisfied with what has been presented to them when it comes to TV rights deals, and streaming platforms, whatever that package that they would get for revenue would be. But it's kind of like an avalanche per se, where it's just the first there's been cracks, but there's just waiting for one move until the rest of the teams and the floodgates open and the conference completely implodes. And we talked about it. I can't remember what show it was, but if Colorado is the team or the university, the program that makes that first jump, then I think it'll be an avalanche. It'll open the floodgates. You'll have Arizona make a move. Arizona's been linked with the Big 12 a lot over the course of the past year. And then, of course, the Big 2 in Oregon and what potentially they would do in terms of moving to the Big 10. You would imagine if other programs are starting to leave the Pac-12, Oregon's not too far from bowing out and heading over to greener pastures as well. And then you're going to be left with a dissolved Pac-12 conference.
We'll see. And let me say hi to No Salt, Does Pepper Bay. Mr. Smith, no worries about being late. Just glad you were able to join us here in the lunch hour of the lunch break here, powered by JM&E, available and streaming to you live on Roku on the BS3 network, and also available on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and of course on YouTube. But Cole says this: Colorado back to the Big 12. The Pac-12 could be in trouble. One of the reasons, it's not a bad thing. Willie has to do what he has to do, but he could provide a Big 10 perspective on our discussions here, because some folks, some reports, some people I respect and trust who are reliable believe that the Big 10 is waiting for the Big 12 to add or teams to go to the Big 12 before they do anything with Oregon and Washington. So if Colorado decides to return to the Big 12, that could open up the doors, as you call them, the floodgates of more movement. As far as timetable, one person told me that it could be as soon as June 1st, which would be interesting, Mr. Yanez, because we were told, and media was told a couple weeks ago, that Commissioner Yormark's possible meeting with the media after the meetings was slated for when?
June 2nd, correct?
2nd. So if Colorado announces June 1st a return to the Big 12, then June 2nd, and we were told it's fluid, it may not happen, that a media session availability may happen, may not happen, but if it does, it'd be on June 2nd. Interesting. Or maybe that's a coincidence. Who knows? But just what are your thoughts on that possibility of it being connected and related? Colorado announces on June 1st or May 31st, whatever, and the commissioner talks to us on June 2nd.
See, my thoughts are kind of trying to connect the dots. And there's been a lot of chatter, the old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's been a lot of chatter over the course of the past year about expansion, about realignment, about programs going elsewhere, leaving jumping conferences. By the way, I think it's real interesting that the Atlantic Coast Conference, did they officially pass it? I saw something that they
Yeah.
endorse a revenue by results.
Incentive-based revenue, it results. So you do well
Correct.
in the revenue sports. So football and men's, women's basketball, that if the teams that win championships, more units, they'll keep a higher percentage of the revenue that they earned. Basically. So
see, I bring that up to kind of, again, like I said, connect the thoughts. There seems to be too much noise, and it's kind of building up. Which, by the way, Chris, what was the article you sent me yesterday that mentioned Kelvin Sampson's approval? Houston head coach Kelvin Sampson's approval was from the Oklahoman as well, Brett Damel. And obviously, we're not privy of what is being discussed in those meetings, but it's very clear that Commissioner Brett Yormark of the Big 12 has a plan. He has a vision, and I think they very well are executing it. Whether that's as early as June 1st, which would be next Thursday, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday, Thursday. Whether it's later, we shall see. But I definitely think there's something brewing. There's too much noise for there not to be building up. It's kind of like a volcano. It's about to erupt. There's smoke. There's a little rumbles, potentially an earthquake here and there, and then explodes. And I think we're really close to having that eruption. By the way, I know we had talked about it already, but the Big Ten started it. I mean,
right.
You rate USC and UCLA, that was the avalanche. I mean, if you really want to go even further, it was the SEC when they poached Texas and Oklahoma. But that's where it is. And if localizing it for the Houston Cougars perspective, which again, men's basketball head coach Kelvin Sampson seems to be on board and seems to be 100% behind the ideas, the innovative vision of Brett Yormark. For Houston, you got to love it, because after decades of being held out of the quote-unquote Power Five, kind of being on the outside looking in of the Golden Club, for lack of a better phrase, it very well seems like they caught, and this is probably not the right way to word it, but they caught a break, or they're certainly in a very, very positive situation. Now, outside of being in either the Big Ten or SEC, it seems like the Big 12 is not only being proactive to being able to create their own niche in the ever-changing world of college athletics right now, but if the Pac-12 falls apart, dissolves, the ACC seems to be trying to catch up. They're definitely being reactive to what's going around them in the college landscape. The Big 12 is the conference to be if it's not part of the Big 2.
Agreed. And just real quickly, Barry Thelma had quotes from Coach Kelvin Sampson and Oklahoma State's Coach Mike Boynton. Their thoughts on Commissioner Brett Yormark, and quote from Coach Sampson, talk about first impression, blew us away. Coach Boynton, I agree with Kelvin. I think Brett Yormark is a rock star, is an absolute rock star. The board of folks who selected him to be our commissioner did a very good job in being able to understand what our conference needs. So they were spoke very highly of him. We'll see how it goes. And of course, he's not going to get support 100% from everybody. Some of his ideas, some folks don't want to change. They're set in their ways. But of course, Coach Sampson, it says, I don't know if it's in this article or not, but he really saluted Commissioner Yormark for being aggressive and being proactive. And
called them a lottery pick.
A lottery pick. And that's one thing he's talked about for Houston athletics. When he said to us, he mentioned last Thursday here on the show, is Coach Sampson continues to push and think outside the box, push for facilities, push for upgrades, not standing still because other conferences aren't standing still, other opponents aren't standing still. So you got to continue to be active and aggressive. And that's one thing you definitely have to salute Brett Yormark for. And this is a great point. And then we're going to shift gears and go back to the Rocket trade proposals as we close it out here on the Roundball Review Takeover. This is true. 5 years ago, the Big 12 was looked upon as a dying conference. No question. I mean, remember, what was it, 2016, 2017, when they had, as Tillman says, and Houston people and some folks say, the circus, the sham of having teams submit proposals and then deciding, oh, no, we're not going to expand. I remember on old podcasts, I roasted Commissioner Bob Bowlesby, just roasted him for how they handled that and treated those schools who were submitting proposals to join. And said, that's it, never mind. And then once Texas and OU left, oh my gosh, Big 12 was like, people think of the Pac-12 now, because the Pac-12 should have, at that point, poached teams from the Big 12. But Bob Bowlesby, I'll give him credit for it. He kept everybody united. And then he went out and got some of those teams who made presentations 5 years ago and said, oh, yeah, now you're good enough. Come on in. Now they got Brett Yormark as commissioner. He's outside the box thinking, and they seem much more stable and united than the Pac-12 and the ACC. So it's amazing how things change. Your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. It's definitely is, like you mentioned, from what appeared to be a collapsing conference. And that was when it was announced that Texas and Oklahoma were leaving for the SEC. I mean, Chris, like you said, there was talks about what was the future of the Big 12 conference. There was even talk that the American Athletic Conference could poach teams from the Big 12 conference.
Remember that? Yep.
That's how absurd and how unstable, how uncertain, really, it's probably a better way to phrase it, it was after that big move. And I think one of the benefits for the Big 12 too, with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, and then obviously them adding 4 new schools, some of which were, like you said, were part of the teams that they quote unquote looked at just a few years prior. Whether it's true or not, they could also kind of blame it on the Texas boogeyman. Hey, we wanted you, but hey, that school maybe had something to do with it, and you not getting in back then. And then again, going back to Commissioner Yormark, it's just being able to be innovative and being a way to differentiate yourself from the SEC and the Big Ten. And specifically with, I want to bring up the comment from D Skills right there, where it says the Big 12 is establishing a brand beyond the field, and that's going to pay dividends down the line. Absolutely. Especially when there seems to be a emphasis on men's basketball and basketball in general.
Mhm.
But look at the international games that we've kicked around earlier on the lunch break, not on this show, but on previous episodes. The clinics at Rucker Park, different stuff like that, to be able to establish footholds in really areas where the Big Ten and the SEC aren't. And especially if they're able to expand more westward to Colorado, to Arizona, potentially adding Utah as well, and some of those other corner schools. That is how you execute and survive, because while the SEC and Big Ten might always be known as the powerhouses for football, the Big 12 will create an identity of its own. And at the end of the day, that's really where you survive. Create an identity that makes you unique and makes you stand out and makes people want to look for you. And I think that's something that it appears Big 12 is doing a good job of.
And I think that's a huge reason for UConn, wanting UConn to join the Big 12 for basketball, is for basketball. It'd be for other, as far as I know, it'd be for all sports. But for the next media rights deal, Commissioner Yormark is really pushing for basically a separate deal for basketball. And if you have, Big 12 has UConn, Kansas, Arizona, Baylor, Houston. Those are some of the top programs in all of college basketball, men's college basketball. So you can go to your TV partners and say, hey, you want top tier matchups, night in, night out, conference play, we got it. We got the best team in college basketball. So what are you willing to give us media rights wise? So we shall see these final few moments here real quickly. Kelly Eco in Athletic. Trade idea. Rockets receive Keldon Johnson from the Spurs. Spurs get the 4th pick and in 2025 top 3 protected pick from the Rockets. Thoughts?
I don't like the trade with the 2025 pick. What does Kelvin Johnson add to the current group?
Keldon, he'd be the lock. He'd be the starting small forward.
Right. Does it move the needle in terms of wins?
I'm asking you.
Over under 5? I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, and the reason for it, if it was a straight up swap, the 4th round pick for Johnson, I could be more open to that, especially if there's just no way for you to be able to trade up into the top 3 of this year's draft. But also track that 2025 1st round pick, which they're on to phase 2, Chris. But you're still not really in the clear when it comes to those 1st round picks because of the Russell Westbrook Chris Paul trade that happened in 2019. So it makes little sense in my opinion to that's not the correct move in my opinion.
All right, next. Rockets get Cam Johnson from Brooklyn. The Nets get KJ Martin, Jayshawn Tate, the 4th pick in the 23 draft, and 2 future 1st round picks, including the Nets' own 24 pick, which Rockets have right now. So they get that pick back.
No, I wouldn't do it because there's a very good chance that next 2024 pick is a really, really high lottery pick. Cam Johnson's again kind of similar situation. He's a nice player, but the only way you do that is if you think he has all-star potential. Honestly, I don't know if he does.
All right. Next, Raptors. Rockets get OG Anunoby. Raptors get KJ Martin, Tari Eason, the 4th pick in this 23 draft, and a top 6 pick in the 25 draft.
Top 6 protected or?
Top 6 protected, yes. So not
he's a
Siakam,
power forward?
OG Anunoby.
Correct. Is he a power forward or what position does
he's a forward. I wouldn't call him power forward, no.
I would that one, I think I would still say no, and the reason for that is because then you're kind of, I think there might be conflict with where you fit them in with Jabari Smith and they're kind of similar. They play in similar positions.
All right. Justin says, Cole and Justin say no. No Salt says no. Let's see. I got a couple more here. These closing moments of Throwback Thursday, the Houston Roundball review takeover of the lunch break. Hawks. Rockets receive DeJounte Murray and John Collins. Hawks get KPJ, Jayshawn Tate, KJ Martin, the 4th pick in this 23 draft, and 1st round picks in 25 and 27.
No. DeJounte Murray and John again, what is the rationale behind it? Like, they're on to phase 2. Just DeJounte Murray and John Collins get you to be a championship contender.
Well, Timmy wants to win. Does he get them?
That doesn't
to phase
win.
3?
That'll get you 41-41, just like the Hawks.
All right. Next, Pacers. Rockets get Miles Turner and Buddy Hield. Pacers get Alperen Şengün, KPJ, KJ Martin, the 4th pick in the 23 draft, and a 1st round pick in 25.
For Buddy Hield and Miles Turner?
Yep.
And they gave up Şengün, KPJ,
and KJ Martin, 4th pick, and a 1st round pick in 25.
That one's more intriguing, but it leaves holes at the point guard position, and then Miles Turner. Is he worth punting on Alfred Şengün? That's the question that has to be answered, and in my opinion, that makes me want to say no to that trade. Goodness, not Şengün. I think Şengün's potential for his ceiling is much higher than Miles Turner's ceiling.
Really? No Salt agrees with you, Justin. Miles Turner and Hill would have made sense when Harden was here, but not with the young guys. And then the last one, Warriors. Rockets get Jordan Poole and Jonathan Kuminga. Warriors get KPJ, Jayshawn Tate, KJ Martin, the 4th pick in the 23 draft, plus Rockets first round picks in 25 and 27.
No.
With a quickness.
Yeah, no. Jordan, if you add Jordan Poole to talk about leading the league in turnovers, I don't buy it. Especially the draft capital you're giving up with the iteration of players. I don't buy it. No.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you very much to Slim Boss, Cold Sports, No Salt, D Skills, Tony M, and everyone else for chiming in your comments here on this edition of the Houston Roundball Review Takeover of the Lunch Break, powered by JM&E. I am KG Chris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review. Find me on Twitter at the HR Review. And Giannis, how can folks find you, sir, on social media?
Yes, sir, Chris. Thank you as always. And people can find me on Twitter at @Giannis_5.
And just a hint to Rocket fans like No Salt and Slim Boss and Tony M and Justin, have a Let's Talk Houston Rockets this Saturday evening, 7 p.m. Central. Going to try something a little different. Going to give away something using some technology. Going to give away, just tune in, see what the giveaway is. So a little teaser there. So this Saturday on the Houston Roundball Review on YouTube, Let's Talk Houston Rockets. We'll kick around these trade ideas from Kelly Eco. And as always, thank you to AJ for letting us take over his show on the lunch break this Thursday. We're going to close it out from Miss Sybil Wilkes. And remember, the Houston Roundball Review, local name, global perspective. Everybody take care.
Wilkes with what you need to know. Today is Thursday, May 25th, 2023. Number 1, the state of Florida Department of Education is slashing references to recent moments in history, including Black Lives Matter, George Floyd's murder, and protesters taking a knee. The New York Times reports that Florida Education Department has announced that state officials initially rejected 82 of 101 social studies textbooks submitted for review because their content included inaccurate material, errors, and other information that was not aligned with Florida law. Manny Diaz Jr., the Florida Education Commissioner, said in a statement that textbooks should focus on historical facts and be free from inaccuracies or ideological rhetoric. Number 2, female weed entrepreneurs who applied for New York's first retail licenses are being left behind in the state's effort to establish an equitable cannabis market. Since launching the program in August, New York regulators have awarded dozens of licenses to entrepreneurs who had an immediate family member convicted on marijuana charges or have a record themselves, but in the process, leaving female entrepreneurs out. Across 2 licensing rounds, 7% in the first round were women, while women made up just 14% of winners in the second round. Number 3, parenting a child with Tourette's syndrome or a tic disorder. Tourette's syndrome is an inherited neurobiological disorder characterized by repeated involuntary movements and uncontrollable vocal sounds called tics. As many as 1 in 100 school-age children show a partial expression of the disorder, such as chronic tics and transient childhood tics. The What You Need to Know newsletter details what parents should do if your child exhibits some form of TS or Tourette's syndrome. Number 4, in the 2021-22 school year in the state of California, about 70% of black students failed to meet state testing standards for English language arts, compared with less than 40% of white students. Governor Gavin Newsom's budget announcement proposed the local control funding formula will harness all $80 billion in K-12 funding and add a complementary $300 million proposal dubbed the Equity Multiplier to address inequities in student performance. It's estimated that school districts serving 95% of African American students in California would need to develop, fund, and implement specific strategies to address significant opportunity and outcome gaps for black students. Number 5, studies show people with depression are more likely to suffer from heart disease and vice versa, but doctors and parents may not be thinking about the problem in the young and thus taking action. Research concluded that depression more than doubled the odds of cardiovascular disease, which includes heart attacks and strokes, as well as problems with heart and blood vessels. Medical experts at the American Heart Association found that teens with major depression or bipolar disorder are more likely than other youngsters to have a host of cardiovascular disease risk factors, including hardening of the arteries. Here's your daily inspiration from Yogi's Jewels. Remember, it is a waste of time, energy, and valuable resources worrying about things we cannot control. Stop worrying. Be content. Join me today live on YouTube and Facebook at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central with radio and TV star Miss Juicy Baby as we discuss her stroke 1 year ago and her recuperation that goes on today. Thank you to our What You Need to Know partners, the American Heart Association and Black Health Matters. I'm Sybil Wilkes. Be informed, be empowered.